Hello, everyone. So excited to be here with my good friend and collaborator, Karl Dakin, the capital coach. Today's word of the day is strategy, and I believe that's a word that can be applied to about every part of your life if you decide to apply it with some good thought and some execution. Love to hear comments. That really drives us to more relevance and hopefully creating some positive takeaways. So, with that said, Karl, why don't you reintroduce yourself and share a little bit about your first take on strategy?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, I am a person who provides advice primarily to small businesses and community projects on raising funding. And I do that in the role of a coach, where I help design the plays. I will coach the principals in a business or community project on what they need to do, try to provide a paint by number kit as much as that's possible within our volatile capital market and last week our volatile political marketplace. Um, the rumors rolling through this week on what's going to happen under the new administration are all over the place, and it promises to be a potentially interesting next year with some major changes on how people can raise funding. And so look forward to those changes because right now change is needed. Uh, with that, happy to talk about strategy today. It's one of the topics that we get into from time to time when we say, well, why didn't that work? And when we start that debrief, that breakdown of why something didn't work, we typically find out that we really didn't have a goal in mind, and we really didn't have a plan to achieve the goal. And oh, by the way, we didn't have a strategy to frame the plan to reach the goal. As they say, every journey starts with a first step. The first step should have a strategy pointing you in the right direction so that you can get to the end of the journey where you want to be. And too often, entrepreneurs, including myself, I have to admit, from time to time, will just jump on an opportunity and take off running without stopping to think about, is this really a good decision, good choice? Is this the best way to pursue this? Are there alternatives that we should have considered, which are easier, quicker, faster? Will anybody join with me or in this opportunity, or am I going to be the Lone Ranger? A lot of good strategic questions that are need to be answered on any new opportunity. And more specifically, if you need outside resources, you need funding in order to go after this particular adventure. Does anybody care? Is anybody going to help? How much work is it going to be to get the funding you need? All questions that could and should be answered before jumping off on a new adventure.
Yeah, that's a pretty concise, comprehensive first shot at strategy. And, naturally, strategy relates to a plan. Just having a plan doesn't mean it's a strategy, but usually something in writing, something that you can follow, you can share, you could track to is important. It's kind of your backbone, I would say, to what you're doing, which is not to say you can't adjust or change, but usually the adjustment is based on justification as to we intended this or thought this, we're learning this. Now we're making an adjustment to really line up with reality. And sometimes the strategy is a vision, and the vision may be great, it may be entertaining and interesting, but when it's applied, does it hold? And the key to a strong strategy, naturally, by definition, is something that is going to be something that will support the execution, because that's really typically what follows. And a strategy is doing the work to apply it. And then, the key is is someone capable of having an overall strategy? A lot of times, what I see is you might have a marketing person that just really emphasizes marketing, but isn't very clear on organization or management or you name it, finance. So it really benefits everybody to get some stronger, smarter heads in the room. And also, I was listening to this Earl Nightingale audible today, and he's an old timer, but his name may make sense because he's part of Cohen Nightingale, which was the largest producer of personal development and had a radio show in the 50s. And he said, once you come up with something, talk to some people who know more about it than you do to get some input, because it could shift the needle a little bit or it could confirm more, and the more confirmation you have, the more confidence you have. And plus, you have more than yourself that you can share with others. And people want validation, they want confirmation, because in most cases, strategies involve an investment. Might be a financial investment, might be a time investment, it might be a people investment. But before you want to invest, you want to understand what are you investing in. And the other party said you have to have a starting date and an ending date, right? So when does this begin? When does this end? And if it's a day, it's not a lot of preparation, it's not a lot of investment. If you say it's going to take a year and you stage it to say, okay, the first 2 months we're going to do this, next 2 months it's going to be like this. It's no different in a building. You got to lay the foundation and then you've got the sticks and the bricks. So yeah, a strategy is vital. Without a strategy, you're just flying without instruments. And it could be a lot of fun. It definitely is going to be interesting and exciting if you're a daredevil. And maybe that's part of someone's plan, as they start out free form, and then based on that, they bring it all back together. But again, everybody's an individual. Everything is personalized. And the proof is always in the pudding. And you don't really have to get to the end pudding to understand if it's going to be an end pudding. So somewhere, if you're tracking it, you could say, well, we're getting off course, or maybe getting on a better course, without judgment. So, Karl, when did you learn and apply the value of strategy and find how important it could be?
Well, like all good entrepreneurs, unfortunately, I learned almost all of it on the street, in the field, the hard way. I graduated from a business school, and they did not teach strategy. It was not offered as a course. It wasn't included in any of the materials of any of the individual instruction. And so I pretty much had to default to my upbringing, where I worked in a family business that was a combination of farming and sale of automobiles and farm equipment. And strategy was the sun is shining, move fast. Um, if there's not enough time for the sun to shine, then don't cut the hay today because it won't cure before we can get it baled and out of the field. So we did a lot of short-term strategy, but I can't say that we did any great long-term strategy. The longest forward-looking was to try to determine what crops everybody thought they should plant next year, which turned out to be the same ones everybody else planted. So it would drive down the price of the grains or crops that we were growing. And everything else was reactive to that. People didn't buy a new tractor, a new combine, if they didn't have a need for it for the crops that they were going to grow going forward. They couldn't afford a new car, or a new pickup, more likely, if they didn't see how everything else was going. So I will say that I probably was getting the very slow absorption route to learning about strategy as I was growing up, and even the ability to recognize that the agricultural market in the United States, and in particularly in the area in which I grew up, was in decline. I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't even have told you the name of what was going on like I could today. because I have 50 years of hindsight to refine my description of what we're talking about. But as you get into starting enough businesses, you see repeated failures, and the failures continue today, and they start with doing a reality check on an opportunity when it presents itself. And so I read, I studied, I watched, I listened to other people talk who knew more than me, and tried to synthesize out of all of this some truths, something that would be applicable to every startup or every business. And it's interesting how few people actually do that. That we'll see people on a soapbox talking about, well, this is the strategy you need. And you look at it and you go, well, that's true for a certain combination of factors, which may not be presented here. So this information, even though it's true and correct in a certain situation, it's actually wrong and incorrect to most of the people who are listening to them. And I find this repeatedly in raising funding, where somebody says, well, look what Guy Kawasaki said. I says, Guy Kawasaki's talking about angel investors in Silicon Valley. And sometimes what he says is correct for a startup small business in Denver, Colorado, but most of the time it's not accurate. It's off target, so to speak. And there was, I was reading a newsletter yesterday from Forbes magazine about the future of finance, and everything about it was aimed at Wall Street and merger and acquisition firms and big stock investment banking groups and so forth. And I'm like, well, that's really not relevant to almost anything, that any of my clients are working on today. So strategy is a reality test. I think you need to test every new opportunity with, do you have something that creates value? Do you have a marketplace that understands and accepts and your valuation of why they should buy this particular product or service? And then do you have a team of people that can realize the opportunities, that is to take this benefit, this new product or service to market in a way that will generate a profit and reward everybody for that. And this is a very 100,000, 300,000 foot level look at an opportunity, but that's where strategy exists. It's not a paint by number kit. That's way down the road into the planning cycle. This is kind of the door that you open to ask yourself, should I go on this adventure or not? And if you don't take the time to answer that, you'll get a lot of surprises, and a lot of them are unhappy surprises.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but it also sounds very important. I believe another aspect of strategy is having it in a form that can be easily communicated and understood. Because a lot of people have a strategy in their mind, and they've done it maybe over time, and they understand that they can work through that. But if they want to have other people, especially if they have a team, if they have investors, bankers, anybody who would have an interest in participating or supporting their initiative, it's easier when it's a clear-cut, let's say, a document that you can share with somebody to say, well, here's my strategy. And your strategy is going to be included in everything you do along the way. So whether it's even to engage somebody like Karl, he would like to know what's your plan, what's your strategy, however you qualify it. So I can at least understand, is this a place I can play if it's sufficient? And, the other thing is, by having a clear-cut plan that's easy to understand and communicate, you're going to get feedback, and you're going to get more relevant feedback because it's going to be towards what the person received, instead of, like Karl says, somebody wrote a book, someone saw a TV show, they got a couple nuggets in their head, and all of a sudden they're going to have a strategy around that. And the key to a strategy, will it hold water? Is it something that's realistic and can be done? Then the question is, are you the person or have the execution to get it done? But if you have a faulty strategy, and we've talked about this in the past, somebody who says, I want to be bigger in Google in the first year, well, that's not a strategy. That's a goodbye. You know, that won't open doors. That will close any doors before they even open or keep them closed. And there's also a confidence level when you have a strategy, because when you can see it, when you believe in it, you're more likely to act on it. If it's like something on a paper napkin you wrote 5 minutes ago at a dinner table, maybe that's the start. I know Hewlett Packard started like that, and that's the tale, that it was two guys at a dinner table and on a napkin put together their ideas, and it turned out to be a huge success. And everybody works differently. Everybody, some people doodle, some people do this and that, but eventually it has to transform into something that the general audience could read. I guess the other thing is not to be too highbrow and put in things that most people don't understand, especially if it's technical stuff that can come later. But it's all, it usually includes the why, right? Here's why I'm doing this. The strategy is the plan, but it has to start with an interest or a motivation, or then the plan isn't going to, or the strategy is not going to go too far. If you have a new strategy every day, that's not a good sign either. So you don't want to be too rock solid on something, especially if it's in the formative stages, but you don't want to be willy-nilly about that either. And again, strategies then form smaller strategies, right? They break out. So yeah, what is the marketing strategy? What is the organizational strategy? What is the financial projections? And those are all strategies. And strategies and plans are almost interchangeable, except a plan could cover about anything, and a strategy naturally is more strategic. So as a business owner out there watching this, what would you share with them as to what's required or necessary for you to really embrace somebody's interest in engaging with you based on the strategy they provide to you?
Actually, I already had one of those dialogues this morning, so I was laughing because one of my clients threw an opportunity over the wall and said, "Is there any funding for this?" And so I responded with 3 or 4 questions, which automatically surfaced. I will call it lack of a strategy that's there. Um, to get, as I said, there's three primary tests that I go through in development of a strategy. They all, in my mind, are based on what is the feasibility, likelihood, probability of getting something done. And as you framed it, part of this is communication. And the reason for that is if you want to do anything all by yourself, it's probably not, a very big task that you're undertaking. And you should be able to tell almost immediately, I've either done that, 100,000 times before, or I've never done it before, and it's going to become something new or different. I might decide I want to take up oil painting, which I've done as a child on a paint by number kit, which is not the same thing at all as buying a canvas and selecting the colors and getting the brush strokes and everything. So that's going to be something new. And anytime you do anything new, it needs to go through a strategic analysis. And the question is, can we actually do it? And as much as I might like to paint like Picasso or a Van Gogh, I don't think I've got it in me. Based on my history, I'm not thinking I've got that skill set. If I ask the question, would the market buy whatever I created? I'm now pretty much into the negatives. Yeah, I created a painting, but it really isn't doing the job for whatever a painting is supposed to do. So I'm failing in that second part. But in the third part, if I'm the only one doing it, I don't have a team, I don't have to communicate. But that's such a rare, isolated instance. Almost anything today requires many different inputs of information from different people because the world is simply that complex. And even something as simple as some people might consider setting up a coffee shop, of which I get to see several examples a year. This requires, well, are you growing your own coffee beans? Well, no, you're not. and and so where are you buying them from, and are they fair trade, and are you compensating the people, and do you have the ability to assure that the crop is going to grow year after year? All these dozens of questions just to get to a bean into the door of your establishment. Then the question is, are you going to roast it yourself, or you're going to have somebody else roast it? And are they going to use a Starbucks roast, or are they going to use a Dasbog roast, which are two different approaches to roasting the beans to get different flavors? And by the time you get done, most people are going like, wow, we're already up to 1,000 questions and we're still working on just one element of the strategy. And my point is, yes, that's correct. So if, as you put it, if you don't know something, you should go find somebody who knows more about it than you do. If you can't find anybody who knows more about it than you do, then you're truly stepping into innovation. You're stepping off the edge of the cliff. You're going into the great unknown. And it isn't that you can't or shouldn't do that, but there are strategies for dealing with the great unknown, which is what I deal with a lot, where people come to me and they're going, well, I want to do this. And they're not asking me for permission. They're asking me to tell them, you think this is going to blow up on me? I go down this path and I look at them, and knowing their background, their history, their competencies, and I may say, this might work if you do the following things, like you need to go add 2 more people to your team, or you need to verify market acceptance before you take the plunge into building a brand new product at a manufacturing facility for someone who doesn't care to buy what you're going to make. So strategy is just a kind of a analysis, a perspective, and the more people who look at this opportunity alongside of you, then you've got more perspectives. And I believe that, like distance vision requires 2 eyes, I like to get half a dozen or more eyes on a new opportunity, looking at it from different perspectives, from people who have experience. And these might end up being members of your team, your board of directors, a board of advisors, as you move this forward, if it makes sense to go forward. But if everybody is basically doing thumbs down on this opportunity, then at that point, you really have to ask yourself, why? Why would I engage in this particular business adventure?
Yeah, that's excellent, and that's why I enjoy doing shows with Karl, as he stimulates my thought process in ways that I couldn't have done on my own. What I appreciate is, again, qualifying the strategy. Is this a brand new initial strategy, or is this a continuation strategy? Right? So let's say you ended the year and you find opportunities in your marketing strategy. Well, you'll have a revised strategy the next year. You know, everybody or most products, as you notice, especially retail consumer products, new improved, right? Add 30% more, whatever it is, protein or whatever it is, which says we haven't stopped innovating. We're always on the move. We're trying to improve our products instead of bringing to market brand new products, which would be more risky, more time and funding intensive, as to continue to add complement to what you have, because now you're not proving something as much as if it was right out of the gate and no one's ever done it before. And the question is, when it's right out of the gate, why is that? How could you be that smart to come up with something no one else could? And it's always possible with technology. Things that weren't capable or possible before become that. AI has changed the face of innovation, including different types of technology that allow for speed, you know, and then you're competing with traditional legacy strategies, you know. So instead of working within something that's pretty much encased and won't change much, do something that now is incorporated, the latest, greatest, that now leapfrogs everybody who's trudging along the old way. The other aspect, too, which I think points to why franchising is so valuable, right? You could open up a coffee shop by yourself, but you're going to have to learn everything about supply chain. You're going to have to learn everything about customer service and people and blah, 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 blah. And all you need is to miss a beat. And all of a sudden, you're not as strong as you would like to be, and you may not have the time to recover. So, by partnering with people who are in the business or have a history of it, you're going to minimize risk because all you need to do is operate. If you can follow the operational manual that's included, there's nothing wrong, and the deviations will really be better customer service. There's no limit on how friendly you can be in any plan. And, what is it about you that makes you distinctive in this area? And if you've got something that really adds tremendous value that isn't something that's exchangeable, now you've got a competitive advantage and you have a defensive position. But anything, I was in retail for a long time. It could be location, it could be help, it could be you name it. You make one major mistake out of the gate, and you're not going to have a very happy ride. What you'll do is try to undo, to redo, and pretty soon you're getting confused. You're making everybody else crazy, which is also a good sign to not get anybody involved until you're comfortable with what you have. If you're going to make a lot of mistakes, make them in the dark by yourself and then take them to the light when you feel there's something to it, because you only have so many reliable sources of whatever it is you're looking for, and you don't want to burn your bridges by being too ambitious or aggressive. The other thing is you got to be able to be a listener. So whatever you come up with, if you go into a meeting with a plan or a strategy and you then say, and everybody's giving you information, well, that's not necessary, I know it all. Well, you better do it all by yourself, because you're going to be by yourself. And again, that's where somebody like Karl or myself could be a benefit as a second opinion, or somebody who can help you along, or at least tell you, you're 6 months away, come back when you have this, right? Because this is what I feel you're lacking. And again, you can't take a poll of one by anybody and put reliability on it. And if you do, it really tests your confidence in it, right? If someone just throws something out, and again, it's who you're talking to. If it's your brother-in-law who's a plumber, I wouldn't put a lot of credence to what he says. But if it was an investment banker who had a lot of experience, maybe not there either. Again,
I'd take the plumber's experience.
Well, especially if you're going to open up a small coffee shop. But again, there's no limit to who you can talk to, right? I mean, there's a limit to who will talk to you, but there's no limit who you can reach out to. And a lot of times having a mastermind group would be a benefit, which I'm proud of the group that me and Karl involved in. Having associations and relationships that you can reach out, because, it's really about testing. And it's testing people's opinion before you have to test the marketplace. And all you got to do is adjust a few things, or if not adjust, be aware. Like, hey, if you walk down this road, be careful of that. Okay, well, it's good to keep in mind. I'll look and become more aware. And then it's also knowing that you got a reverse and a neutral gear. And sometimes you got to back out of something. Sometimes you got to pause in something to reflect and review. Nothing typically is a straight line. If it is, it's usually based on something that's happened before you, right? If someone says someone just ran a 4-minute mile, well, you know what the distance is, you know what the time is. At least you know your parameters already. And the key is, again, you got to ask yourself, there's a saying, if you got a big enough why, you'll figure out the how to. How important is this to you? And it has to be as important or more important than the people you're engaging, right? Because they're here and there. You're really putting a stake in the ground. And the last thing you want is things to start shifting under your feet when you're working. right? You lost this, you picked up this, and all of a sudden, one step forward, two steps back, kind of thing. And another thing is it something you'll enjoy along the way, not just at the destination? Is this something that will bring value to yourself and to other people, or is this just a cool gadget, right? That doesn't have any emotion to it. Karl, what's your sense of the cross sections that you deal with, which is pretty significant?
Well, it's an interesting perspective between the destination and the journey. There's been a lot written about that an adventure is about the journey. It's not about the destination. But this week and last week, I've been faced with a number of situations where people have a vision of what their destination is going to be. But that vision is, I will say, soft. It's not defined. And at the same time, it's probably not attainable. So if all they care about is getting to a destination that they may never reach, then we have a very terrible but common situation of people arriving and the destination didn't provide all the benefits, all the upsides that they were looking for, or they never reached a destination because they overshot, overreached, and reeling people back from a vision where it's in there, they're all ready to go, they're all pumped up, they want to go make it happen, and you're saying, well, yeah, you're telling me you're going to walk to New York City, and you haven't been outside walking in 6 months. I think we have a number of potential challenges in your health, the weather, the doability of it. All these things need to be taken into consideration, and this is a reality check. Again, it isn't that you can't walk to New York City. There may be a way to do it. It may be possible, but is it practically doable? Is it threatening to you, your lifestyle, your family, your community? Are you taking all these things into consideration? And if you've never done it before, then this is, as we call, jumping off the cliff and taking a lot of risk along with it. It's a tough situation to get people to stop and ask the hard questions because they're going, well, I want to do this. I want the vision. We're not fighting the vision. We're fighting whether or not you can get to the vision that you have in mind. And as you described it, is it good for you? Is it good for everybody around you? There's all these movies where they say, well, if you make a wish, then you'll get whatever you want. But got to keep in mind somebody else over here is going to die. And yet we see a lot of business plans that we call extractive. This is what we call the negative part of capitalism, where you say, yes, you can achieve everything you want to, but you're going to have to pay your employees minimum wages. You're going to have to fire people despite doing good work. You're going to have to maybe cut the quality on your products or services in order to get to your destination. Is that what you want to do? And if they say yes, you go, okay, bye. Work with someone else. But it's just a matter of understanding and getting enough people to give you that feedback so that you know that this is doable. It's practically, it's possible, it's a high probability of success, even though it still may be something new and different for you. And you made a comment, earlier about, well, what if I want to do a new Christmas sale, get new sales in the door? Well, your strategy at the starting point is supposed to be this big box that frames you. And if you do anything that's new or different while you're implementing your strategy, then technically you need yet another strategy for that change, that innovation, that deviate, and ask yourself, is this a deviation from my goal? Is this going to take me off the tracks? Because this is a common issue where somebody goes, hey, I'm out of money. I don't have enough money to move my business forward. I'll go get a side job or a second job to move things forward. The next thing you know, the second job's taking up 100% of their time and the business is dead in the water. So there are all kinds of distractions, and not that they're bad distractions, but they are to the business. So look at your strategy, make sure that I get up every morning and kind of fine tune it. Like, is it pointed towards my goal, towards where I want to go, my mission? I'm backstage again. There I am. I'm back again. Uh, so the point being is that as you move along this path, you're going to have to make changes. So, radical changes are called pivots. Everything else is just normal adjustments to reality. And if you're going to do anything new or different, stop and create a strategy for that new or different thing you're going to do. Don't just assume that you react to whatever hits your desk in the morning or late at night. If it's enough of a difference from anything you're doing, ask yourself, will this keep me moving towards my goal? Is this an improvement or is this a detour? Do I need more input on this before implementing this type of action? So that you are keeping focused, you are maintaining a realistic look at what you're doing, and you're dealing with it in the best possible fashion. Too often, as an entrepreneur, we get highly reactive. Bad news comes in, and we react to it immediately, and then we're thinking, "Nah, it wasn't the best way of handling that." And I had some people I wanted to yell at this week, and I'm now old enough and experienced enough that I wait and make a controlled yelling experience, which is sounds more advisory in its nature, because I'm taking the anger out of the frustration, and I'm trying to put the interest of the person I'm talking to at the front end of the conversation, but they're still doing wrong and they're still making a mess of things. So it needs to be corrected. I can't stand silently and just watch them crash into a wall. I have to try to do what I can to throw out a life preserver or readjust their thinking to point them in the right direction. And that takes more skill because now you're working with other people who have their own ideas, agendas, perspective. And to keep a team working together, it's very hard. It's a leadership element. It's a partnership element, and it's also part of your own capabilities and skills that you need to work on all the time.
Great points. And I think discipline is so important. And if you're more focused on me than it, you've got a challenge from the beginning, right? So taking things personally, especially when they're not meant that way, is not a good way of responding. The other element is doing the best you can with what you have. Frustration and anger don't help you. If anything, it hurts you because people are going to get turned off. People are going to say, well, geez, it wasn't that big of a deal, and this person's losing their mind today. And what does that say? And that whole saying, the best laid plans of mice and men typically go astray. When you're, let's say, seasoned and experienced, you anticipate things going astray. You don't get surprised by them. To what extent, when, what are the conditions? If a hurricane comes in, there's really nothing you can do about it, right? And that's more of an act of God than it is something you got to take responsibility for whatever challenge it provides for you. But it's that resiliency. It's that ability to kind of get down but not stay down and come back stronger than you would have without it. So adversity kind of strengthens you if you give it that opportunity. If you resist it, fight it, deny it, color it in different ways, you're just like putting lipstick on a pig at that point. It's not helping. And your team is looking to you as a model, right? You're the one who's leading them. You're the one who's supporting them. Is that giving them support of leadership, of character, of integrity? because those are the key things. And, honesty is always the best policy and strategy. It's better to expose what there is. You don't have to go crazy and come up with 100 risk factors and know that you know all of them, but enough to say, hey, this could happen, so buckle up. And if it does happen, we've got plans for it or a strategy to respond to it, which is to understand it, go back to the board, come up with something better. Hopefully you're not in a business opportunity that is minute by minute dependent on something happening. And I think funding has a big impact in saying, well, if we're going to hire 10 people, there's going to be a time and a cost to this, right? We got to do interviews. We got to make offers. You're going to pay people before they get their true value, because initially they're probably coming in with a clean slate or sometimes have to unlearn things. And the other thing is what kind of business do you want? And is it the time and money that gives you that opportunity? You don't want to start late. You don't want to start short, because then you're going to start doing indirect things instead of direct things. Like Karl says, I get a job here, I sell this stuff off too early. And all you're doing is getting into a survivor mode, which is really tough. I mean, because eventually it just is too much resistance that you're having to deal with. And, the other thing is finding that low-hanging fruit of success. Proof of concept, something that says, okay, we're generating sales now. We're generating cash flow now. We're generating profitability now. And just like a building, you're going to put a lot of money into that building before you see a dime of rent. Sometimes it could be 3-4 years and a lot of money is invested with the knowledge or confidence that once it's built, it will all come back. But if you sold a concept as within a month, we're going to start being cash flow positive when we're investing all this money, it's not very, very smart strategy. And I think the other key is some things you have to have a balance of, having a strategy, but also accepting results and adjusting as you go. I mean, every day I come up with a better strategy than the day before. Doesn't mean it's a better execution or a better success, but I will look at something and say, well, it didn't ring a bell. And just to say it didn't work one time doesn't mean you throw it out the window, but you can say, well, what is it that could have been better? And you don't know what that is until you do it. And then you change a line. Yesterday I decided on a new strategy for marketing the collaboration group. And I think what came through is, what is it that's the most important thing you need or want to do? That's what you should focus on first, because a lot of things get diluted when you start to do, well, I'll do 3 things at once, and you're doing ABC testing before you even did any real execution. And sometimes people are just into it for the form instead of the substance. Right? They can build a great strategy. They can actually execute on it. But was that the most preferable way? And at what time does the business start working for you? And I think that's an important thing. I mean, in the beginning, I know when I started business, I worked 7 days a week forever, right? Because guilt wouldn't allow me to sit home, watch Sunday football all day long and know I've got a bundle of work waiting for me. And again, that takes effort. It's no different than if you want to lose weight. There's a strategy. Eat less, exercise more. That's as simple as it gets. Input, output. And if you can make those adjustments, you're going to lose weight unless you have another issue, but that's a different strategy. So I would say the same thing is you're building a lean, clean fighting machine. Right? Where do you come out of the gate that say, hey, I'm going with my best foot forward. I'm going to go on the offensive. I'm going to take the initiative. I'm going to get aggressive. And usually it's repetition. You can lose weight for one day, but if you can't consistently do the same thing, then it's a faulty plan, or it's a short-term plan. Maybe you'll lose weight so you can get in your dress next week And then after the event, you don't care, and you can put the dress in the closet and put your diet behind with you. But there is joy to coming out with a quality strategy, because when you know all the tumblers kind of fit perfectly, all the combinations fit into place, there's excitement. It's like discovery, like we hit something here. You're still going to be, at the victim of fate and circumstance and situation. But, if you can do it once, you can do it again. And that's the most important. And how do you do it better each time? And, when I look at LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live, it's different than a lot of other people look at it, because does this fit into your strategy, and how often are you using it? One thing I know about LinkedIn, they never tell you how much you can't do, right? They never say, well, you can't post 10 times a day. You can't have 5 losers. You can, it's an open field. Why do you choose to stop early and move on to something that's less important? How many people are working for people that time would have been better spent working for themselves? Because you're going to get short-term money, trading time for money, let's say, instead of a long-term investment. Because if you're valuable to others, why aren't you valuable to yourself? And usually it's because you need money, right? If you didn't, you probably wouldn't be doing that. But that's not a good reason for your strategy. It's a good reason personally or financially in the short term. And I guess that's where the rubber meets the road, is what distinguishes short term from long term, and how much of a promoter are you? Like now, every post will have my mastermind proposition in it. Why? Because it's got space and it carries the message along with another message, right? Would you open up an ice cream store with one flavor? Maybe you'd have the best vanilla or chocolate, and maybe that's enough. But you're going to also cut off half of the people who don't decide your favorite flavor is their favorite flavor. And, sometimes it takes a lot. We talked about it in the past, in the old days, which wasn't that long ago, 5, 6, 7 impressions would really get your message across. And now it's more like 24 or 28. Well, if you're still working on 5, you're 19 short. And if you make a judgment on 5, you're going to miss out. Or at least if you didn't go to course, you'll know, hey, 24 times of this only got me this. And I think that's really the key, is consistently showing progress, positive benefit, and transforming that positive result into the future action. And then also, if you're with a team, how do you build the team? You might be perfect, but you could have the star quarterback and nobody's on the front line. Nobody's able to catch a pass or run the ball. And that's not very good for the quarterback's numbers. If you ask anybody, some quarterbacks weren't that good, but they had a great team around them. And that was enough to win a championship. And the other idea is every day you get to draft your team, right? You get to say, well, we're going to bring this new person in, move this other person out. I mean, you got, I don't know how many people on a football team, 40, 50 people, whatever the number is. In college, you probably got anybody who wants to buy a uniform and sit on the sidelines, and that's okay too. But in business, how critical are you of imperfection when it can be cured? When do you see something not right and not do something about it? What do you see about your strategy that you don't revisit? And that's a key thing. You start out with a great strategy, and then you leave it behind, and you just go about doing whatever you're doing. And that's a reflection on, are you that kind of person people will have confidence in investing in, whether it's working for you, investing money with you, whatever the case is. And are you a good person to be with? And I think that can go a long way. I know a lot of vendors do more for people that are more friendly, but also more disciplined in making sure they honor their commitments. Someone who will give their word and keep it goes a long way towards building trust and confidence. And I think your plan has to build that trust and confidence, because who says that you're going to be thinking about their interest, right? And I know a lot of people raise money for the purpose of just getting the money. right? And once they get the money, they're back to wherever they were without a lot of regard for who supported them. And that's why having a track record also helps. You know, if you got a strategy in aerospace and you've had 6, 7 successes in that industry, your strategy is going to have a lot more credibility to those who would invest because you've got a record that says, hey, they've done this, this, and this. And naturally, they should be able to do that. Also, who's with you? You know, if you got a strong finance guy, if you got a strong marketing girl, if you got all these things going for you, that can kind of get rid of the rough edges, right? It's like, hey, he's great at sales, but he doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to this, but he's got a backup or he's got a cohort in the organization. And then what could be next, right? Here's our strategy that could lead to this. And maybe that justifies the investment because you're not going to get as much up front as you would have with saying, okay, this was stage one, that if it's successful, goes to stage two, and blah, blah, blah. And the ability to really communicate it in a credible way. So we've got Jason Gerardo here. Great to see you, Jason. I had to look you up, but I usually know it's you. Jason's a great guy. He has a company called One Path Coaching, does a lot of development and support for people, and we'll be on the show tomorrow with Dave Snell and Kelly. So glad to have you, Jason. And, you know, I know all the people I'm working with have strategies, have plans, and some of them are pretty sophisticated. And that's where I can learn a lot from, is the exchange of ideas and thoughts. And, you know, just like people read books and that inspires them, people watch videos. Well, following somebody's post and LinkedIn lives and things of that nature, get your mind motivated. It's like exercise. You know, if you watch an exercise video every day, it changes, and it should change how you feel about how you feel after it as opposed to before it. And sacrifice is a lot to do. And one other thing I'll say about strategy is everybody wants to know, okay, I know my part. What's your part? What's your sacrifice? You know, and why would you raise $100,000 and take a $200,000 a year paycheck? It's counterintuitive versus saying, hey, I'm going to do something. And anytime you do things, pay for performance, or I won't take this until this happens, right? It's no different than going public and saying, I'm going to hold my shares when the lockup period's over. So you know that it's not going to all go on the market at one time and depress your shares. Again, we're getting a little bit off track with some of these examples, but that's what happens when you have a strategy towards a word of the day, but your strategy won't hold water for an hour in regards to that. And I think that's the benefit is you don't want to be too loose. You don't want to be too tight. You want to be comfortable and flexible with what you do. And also, there should be progress. So if you saw somebody 6 months ago with a strategy and you revisit them 6 months later, has things changed? Have you learned anything? And a lot of people, you know, will tell you, if you can cross these two borders, we'll be in, right? Some people, I know I did a venture capital financing that the two organizations weren't very familiar with what I was doing. And what they said is you bring an industry leader in for the third piece of the puzzle or the investment, and that we'll go forward with it. And that was my call to action. And I think that's important with a strategy is when you present it and you're not getting a lot of excitement, ask why. Even if you get turned down, you know, it's okay to say, I'm fine with I'm not coming back to sell you or change you, but if you can just help me out here, where was it I needed to be that I wasn't? What did you hear that turned you off? And maybe it's like, well, you're right, because that's the way it is. And I can't change it, and that's honest. But it's like, well, geez, it's not a big deal to shift from here to there. And the other thing is, how inclusive are you? Well, you know, if you're great on retail locations, well, why don't you play a bigger part than just an investor? right? Why don't you get on the advisory board or on the board of directors, or have a contract that says, okay, you can participate this way. It all works together. But I do think that it makes sense, if something's important to you, to have somebody like Karl confer with them, run things by them. And it doesn't have to be a long commitment of time, few minutes on the phone, or even, being able to send somebody something and say, here's what I want to talk about. If it's interesting, let's talk, because really respecting everybody's time is so important, right? People want to know that you care as much about them and their interests as you do your own. And that's really what builds a team, is someone who's, they say there's no I in team, you know, uh, which somebody had a question about. So, Karl, we're coming up on top of the hour. I always love having these discussions on strategy because it kind of tightens my thought process. So, what words of wisdom would you like to share for people who are considering developing a strategy or optimizing the one they have?
Yeah, so I think that people need to keep in mind that strategy is kind of like the first step. It's before you get into planning, before you get into implementation of the plan. It is intended to help you determine which direction you want to go, but it provides a framework for that. And I use as an example, if I want to plan a trip from Denver, Colorado to another location like Kansas City, we have an interstate highway that runs between the 2 points. Uh, and at this point, if I decide that I want to drive to I want to get to Kansas City, I'm assuming I'm going to drive, but I might take a plane, or I might walk, or I might bicycle. Each of these choices would be within the scope of a strategy to ask myself, is that what I really want to do? Is it feasible, possible for me to do that? Will I need any help along the way? Because if I drive a car, I'm going to have to buy gas. If I get in a plane, I don't have to do anything till I get out at the KCI International Airport. So they all impact, which direction you're going to go, how you're going to do it. But before you jump on a plane with a ticket, it's good to know where you're going to end up. If I'm driving from Denver to Kansas City, why would I end up in Chicago? And if I'm driving through Kansas and I see that there's the largest haystack in the world, and I can take a little detour to go see that, is that within the scope of my strategy, or is this a detour, a distraction, something that's going to prevent me from getting to Kansas City? A short exercise this weekend is just plan a short trip from one point to another. Ask yourself all these different questions. Where am I going to go? Why am I going to go? How long is it going to take? How am I going to get there? And this is the same process that you should do before you start driving, before you get on the plane. And yet, we don't do this when we start a new business adventure, or even within a business adventure. We say, well, hey, I'm going to pursue this new customer segment. Well, if you've never pursued them before, do a strategy first. And as we've talked about, your viewpoint is very valuable, but more eyeballs on this will make it more valuable, give you a greater test. Will this meet the determination by everybody else that it's viable and feasible? Because if everybody's voting against you, you really need to stop and ask yourself if this is where you want to go. And if they tell you this is cool, but you need more help, or this or that or the other, you've got to build that back in and start your strategy all over again, because you're incomplete.
Yeah, perfect. And what comes to mind is testing your strategy. And when I started my first business here in Colorado, nothing worked, even though it was based on 4 years of being successful with it in Detroit. But it was a different market, and I had to adjust to it. And one thing I did, because I was running out of time and money all at the same time, and they usually kind of go together, is I decided what is the most important thing. And the most important thing was paying bills, right? And I decided with my wife that we'll just sell everything at cost, because if it won't sell at cost, we're finished anyways. And we sold out. And then at least we had activity, and we were selling it so cheap that the word got out, and we were in the newspapers at the time. And then slowly we started adding the margin up. But at least we're getting traffic. People were coming in, spending money, getting to know people, getting to pass out cards to people. Then you start expanding inventory and selection. So you got to get to a base where things are moving forward. May not be as complete, but it's better than sitting at a place that doesn't work and keep grinding away and never getting anywhere and then blaming everybody but yourself, because you got to get the fire going. Once you get the fire going, then you can build the fire. And I think that's important. But so many people are like, I can't work for nothing, or I got to make 30%. It's not worth it. Well, no, you're not in that position. You're not a person who needs to be asking. You're the one who needs to be doing more in building, and whatever it takes to get it going, gets it going, because if not, you time out or you wear out. Either way, you're out. And I think you want to be in, and you want to talk to people who have navigated that before. No matter what you're into, someone else has been in that situation, maybe in a different business. They may be able to help you. And sometimes just someone to say, don't worry, I've been there. You're 3 months away. Keep plowing forward. You'll make it there, and call me when you need me. And that's all you need to keep going, because someone who knows more, has done more, and is, distinguished themselves, is supporting you in that way. So again, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And it's worth doing it with the people who can help you get it right, because a little bit of expense up front can save you a lot of misery down the road, or even disappointment and failure. And you don't want that result, because once you fail, it's harder to get back in the game, especially if it's your first entry into something like that. So yeah, I would say in conclusion, strategy is vital. I use it every day in every way, and it's effective because I feel like I've done something with strategy, or strategies use me in a positive way. So with that said, I want to thank Karl, want to thank Jason, and anybody else watching, and look forward to tomorrow when we'll have Kelly, Jason, and Dave. So with that said, go out and build and